That's such an interesting question. And we ask people, like, what do you do? And as if what we do is who we are. And that's not necessarily the case.
Hey, Matt, thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to bring you back on the podcast. It was such a privilege to have you on last year.
So fun. So fun. So fun, Lisa. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, and time flies. So I'm excited to have you back on today to hear some more. We were already chatting a little bit about perspectives and stuff like that. But before we get into all that,
Yeah.
just for people who don't know who you are, would you mind just introducing yourself and just a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. No, my name is Mat Lewczenko. I am a performance coach, keynote speaker, author, course creator, dad, husband, all around pretty rad guy. And
I love it. The intro's changed since last time.
yeah, no, it's and it just, I mean, it's so funny. It's like, who are we and what do we do? And like, is it really like based on what we do or have done? I share this story in my keynotes when I talk, and there's always that like obligatory first slide that you put up of like all the things that you've done. So you
Right.
can, so everyone can justify why they spent money to be
It
here
like
or why they're sitting in the seat, right?
validates. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
the
being on
validation
stage.
slide, that self-promotion slide. And so as one of these days when I was looking at it and reviewing it, just even in real time, like in front of 300 people, right, at an event up in Minnesota, and a story came to my mind because I was out in the lobby and someone was like, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm one of the speakers," and et cetera, et cetera. And then it got to me. It's like, that's such an interesting question. And we ask people, like, what do you do? And as if what we
Mm,
do is who we are. And that's not
right.
necessarily the case. And a fun story was my daughter, who's 11 now, when she was 9, when we just got into COVID and had to do all of our calls on Zoom. I was in our dining room one day just doing some calls. And some of my coaching calls can get very personal and very like emotional and very raw and transparent. And uh, a lot of my calls, the other side is crying. And my daughter's in the other room watching, her shows, et cetera. And so someone was like, "So what does your dad do?" And Sophie was like, "Cry." That's that's what dad does. And so that story came to my, like, in literally in the middle of the event. I share that story, and yet what I realized after that the gentleman asked me in the lobby, and I come back and I look at the slide and I was like, what is this what I do?
hmm
And it's not necessarily what it came down to. And what I realize is what I do is whatever it takes.
Mm,
And that list was just the results I needed at that time for myself and my family. And
mm.
so what I discovered through that question unknowingly in the audience was, we are not what we do, right? We are
hmm
who we are. And who I am is simply someone who's willing to do whatever it takes.
Mm. That's so beautiful. I think there were so many lessons in that alone of what you just shared because it's like, the world is like always giving us feedback. And so
Yeah.
in that moment of like realizing that, it was like it was giving you even more feedback to like a deeper understanding and deeper connection of like it's not who
Mm-hmm.
you are, what you do. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
saying it's uh whatever it takes, right? That's what
Yeah.
you're resonating with.
Yeah.
And that's an added perspective for me because for me, I'm always like, well, I do what's needed.
Mm-hmm.
And, similar, just a slightly different
Yeah.
wording.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, not only what's needed, and even if it's uncomfortable,
hmm
even if we don't feel valid, even if we haven't done it before, even if it's our first time, right?
hmm
So, right. Not only is
Yeah.
it needed, it's whatever it takes.
Yeah. It's both. It's
Love
like
that.
really both. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least for me in my mind, as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, I can add that in with, a
Mhm.
needed and like, what does that look like differently for me?
And I make people cry. So there's also that.
I was gonna say, and you can add that to your intro now that you make grown-ups cry.
Yeah, no, it's in there now. So it's in there. Right. So,
That's
what's
perfect.
what the reason why I also bring that up is just to share with individuals so they get to know me a little bit more, and what is the goal, what is my purpose, and kind of the direction that I'm working on living my life right now is, a lot of my clients, I asked them the same thing. And I said, okay, you have to answer this. Like, what is it that you do? And you can't talk about your profession,
Hmm.
right? Like that, you're not allowed to say, well, I sell houses, or I do mortgages, or I have a title company, or I run a florist shop. That because
Hmm.
that's not necessarily what you do. It's how you do what you do, but what is it that you do? And so what I've discovered is that my mission right now specifically is, I work with business owners and entrepreneurs, and I
Hmm.
help them gain time back in their lives through systems and leverage so they can become more present instead of having to
Hmm.
buy presents to show their family that their love and affection.
Oh, so good.
So that's what I do. So for me, my mission is to help people become present instead of
Hmm.
buying presents. So it's presence over presence.
Yeah. That's great, Matt. I didn't know that, with probably you've changed some of the stuff since the last time we've talked, but I'm like, I
Lots,
love that.
lots of change. Lots has changed.
Lots of
Yeah.
changes. I mean, who would we be to hop back on here if things hadn't changed? And it's been a crazy last year was a really interesting year in general. But so I think that's so needed because people do really identify with their profession. And that's one thing that I really started seeing on my journey too, was just how much we really go into that of
Mhm.
it's such an attachment of the identity part of it. And it's like, well, if we don't who have that, then who are we? And you really like can struggle with that or get depressed about that if you lose the job or if you close the business or if it's a relationship thing and that ends or something like that. So
You nailed that so strongly right there, because last time we spoke, we were having a conversation of how I was coming through a new transition, right,
mhm,
in my world, and to where, having had my identity tied to an organization for 12 years, when
mhm,
when I decided to break free and start blazing, our own opportunity, boy, that that identity shift, not just physically but also mentally, was so I wasn't prepared. I
mhm.
wasn't prepared to feel so disconnected and like really challenging and questioning, like, who actually even am I? Right?
Yes.
Like what are we doing here? Um and then going, why does where I'm at have anything to do with the answer to this question?
Yeah.
So
I think that
yeah.
question alone of who am I think that's the question. If we can continue to ask ourselves like that, if not every
Yeah.
day, like at least once a month, at least like circle back to that like yearly because it changes in the sense of what we think we are,
Mm,
with the profession and the life and all that. Cause still it kind of comes back to that, even though we let go of it so much, it's like then we still build it up again and the new adventures and the new businesses, the new all that stuff. But it's like you're saying, it's not really who we are. It's what's under that and what the
yeah.
mission is and like what
Yeah.
the really resonating with the why.
Mhm.
I I had a quote here because you had mentioned on Facebook, I believe it was about the Jamie Kern book Worthy.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I have not read it, but I just happened to look up a quote before we came on here. And
Mhm.
this was from her. And it says, your superpower lies in your own authenticity,
Oof.
which I think is so resonant with kind of what we're talking about is it's not so much what you do, it's remembering who you are and getting connected with
Huge.
that.
Hugely. Hugely. So this past 2 years
Hmm.
um has for me been the biggest journey into really digging deeper into authenticity, right? And
Hmm.
what does that mean for me? And who and like
Just going to ask you that.
right? And so what's interesting is I recently reconnected with somebody that I worked with in the past in a former role. He was an agent in one of our organizations that I this was in like 2016,
Hmm.
where I was leading that office and he was one of the agents, and he had left that office and I had left that world, and we had kind of just not been around each other for many years. And then I ran into him at an event in St. Louis. Oddly enough, I'm in Kansas City. We were at a regional event, and I saw him. He jumped up, he hugged me, and we visited. And he's like, "Let's get together. I really want to connect because I've been watching you." And I'm like, "Cool, absolutely." And so we got together, and the first thing he said, and it floored me at that moment, and he said, "I just need you to know that authenticity looks really good on you."
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "I never knew the guy that you're being right now, like who you are right now, and the way and how you're showing up." He says, "It looks good on you, so keep
Mm.
going." And I was like, "Okay, fair, good,
Wow,
thank you,
powerful word.
thank you." Right, like exactly when we need it, we hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly when we needed it, we hear it. I love that. And just like it's a testament to then like all the hard work and like feeling more in authenticity mode. Because
Yeah,
if it somebody's commenting, that's the feedback again, the feedback from the world, the outside world of just like it's really showing up and shining through. And that's what the world needs is like more of you,
sure.
your true
So
self.
this shows up in coaching often, and we had a very big conversation around this as well as so like here's the aha and the realization that we came to with this is
Mhm.
that if the people in your world are not fulfilling you like in a certain kind of way emotionally, like if your relationship quotient with others is less than satisfactory, or
Mhm.
your clients, or you're working with individuals that you just don't necessarily resonate with or vibe with,
Mhm.
it's because you're hiding.
Mm.
It's because those people were attracted to the version that you thought that the world needed as
Mm.
opposed to who you really are, because the people that need to know you don't know you exist because you're muted. So until you show up authentically or with
Mhm.
pure authenticity, you're going to continue to have clients that are less than satisfactory. You're going to have relationships that are energetically draining, that aren't
Mm.
necessarily reciprocating or even rejuvenating
Yeah.
because you're hiding, because you're not willing to put yourself out there, because the people that are looking and waiting for your authentic self are still on the sidelines. They don't know you. They don't see you. And there you are standing in plain sight, but you're
That is so
hiding your
good.
authentic self and you're not allowing your soul to connect with those that need you most and the people that are actually here to energize you and fill you up as opposed to drain you. So if you're
Yeah.
constantly drained and you constantly feel like you're pouring into others and you're constantly having to flex your behavior for others, stop effing hiding. Go full blast. Let the world sort itself out.
That is like so powerful. Like I got chills there. And then if you're listening to this, you need to go back and listen to it again because that was very clear. And if you felt it too, there was like slight discomfort. There's like
Mm,
slight discomfort that comes up because you're like, wait a minute, how am I doing that? I was starting to think that. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm
yeah,
like, where in my life am I doing that?
yeah, yeah.
That's really powerful.
Yeah, so that's just the challenge that I share with everybody on our calls is like, okay, go out. Well, like, what's a way that you can show your authentic self this week today? Like, what's a relationship that you can reach out to and like really connect with in an authentic way that sets them off guard,
Hmm.
that allows you to just really resonate and
Yeah.
put yourself out there. Go be
Yeah.
beautiful. Go be wild. Go be weird. Right? The world needs more weirdness out
Oh
there.
my gosh, the world needs more weirdness. I mean, if people saw how I was talking to my dog 5 minutes ago, then, maybe that's something I need to show more of.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a
That's so
journey.
great, Matt.
Yeah, man, it's a journey. It's been a lot of fun. And look, of course, like as the pendulum swings in any direction, there's transition, and that in itself is interesting, right? If you choose to just see it for what it is, because you're going to cause some people pause. Like
Hmm.
when because everyone goes, well, what's gotten into you? Or you've changed. And the thing is, like, I haven't changed. I'm just allowing myself to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Who
Right.
I really am, who I
Right.
forgot I was almost in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So, you'll have to let some people just either get used to it or
Yeah.
create space for it.
Hmm. Yeah. So from that transition, because I would classify 2023 for myself as a very big year of transition among
Hmm.
other times before
Hmm.
that. But it's like we go through the transition, and then when we're coming out on the other side, then what has your perspective been like looking back from that? Like the last time we talked, we were saying, talking a little bit about the journey and like climbing the mountain and those
Yeah.
things. Has that viewpoint changed or added anything to that? Would you say?
So, like, for me, 2022, 2023 was the year of the crucible. I mean, I had to grind myself down to nothing to begin to just separate the parts of me that were no longer necessary and the versions of me that I was looking to put back together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it for me it began with climbing up the wrong mountain and hitting rock top like we had discussed, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where according to everyone else's metrics, I was winning in all the areas that I was being judged and I hated every part of it. I hated who
Mm-hmm.
I became. I hated again because I was so afraid of my own authenticity because I was supposed to play a role. And that role, no, like I was really good at it and I did it better than most. And it almost cost me everything.
Mm-hmm.
It almost cost me everything. So for me, the whole rebirth and going and the visual again, I think that what I really want to stress is that yeah, you could be on top of the mountain, and if you go and look across and go, I think I see my mountain. The only way to get there is back through the valley, and it's shitty. Like it's scary, it's messy, it's ugly, and there's going to be a time where you're in it and you can still remember the way back to the mountain that was safe and it was warm and it had abundance and you were doing well, right? And you got to ask yourself, okay,
Yeah.
do I keep going through this, not knowing how long this valley is, or do I go back to what was still comfortable? And because like this really sucks,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And it's
It's
just
so
make
hard going
yeah,
through it.
making a decision to just not stop, to keep going. Like what did someone say is like the worst thing you can do when you're going through hell is to stop. Like just keep going.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is like when you were there, what did you keep reminding yourself of or like looking back of like what was it that got you through that? Kind
Yeah,
of
so
what you're saying there, but
for me it was real simple. Like I was on the verge of losing everything. Like
hmm
I was at the top and the bottom at the same time. So I knew what the trade-off was if I decided to go back, and it was unacceptable to me. So for me it was like I don't care how bad it gets here, if my family's together and I'm healthy and all these things are great. Like we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna make it through. Like even if we have to move to Venezuela, I don't care. Like whatever it is.
that's really powerful. And with that, like what I'm hearing is like you made a decision that what was back there was no longer an option.
It was an
So like,
absolute line in the sand.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
drawing a line in the sand, that's such a great
Hmm.
way to put it of like, okay, this is where it ends, and then I'm going to move forward. Just for if anybody's going through something like that, or if you have, it's like, we I was listening to something the other day and I was like, we're in the suffering, at times, and we think, going through some of these challenges, the point is like we're not needing to suffer and forget that we're all alone and that it's going to be like that forever, right? But it's
Hmm.
like there are going to be challenges, there are going to be struggles, there are going to be things to overcome, but we don't have to like suffer in it. Does that make sense? Like what I
Yeah. Yeah. So it's you've got to choose your suffering,
Yeah.
because the constant is growth is uncomfortable, and there's some version of suffering. I, I, my version was I was winning and suffering and not being
Right.
authentic and true to myself. So I knew what that was like. So if I get to now finally be who I am and connect with the people that need me most and live my pure authentic self and really discover who I'm here to serve at the highest level and suffer at that time, I'm going to take authentic suffering all day over artificial suffering, right?
Hmm.
Like,
I know
yeah.
what you're saying. Like it's there's a differentiate that you're doing what is truest to yourself.
Mhm.
And if that comes with the challenge of it, that's okay.
Yeah, at least
It
this suffering is mine
Yeah.
and I'm
And you're
choosing it as opposed to having it being placed on me.
absolutely, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I resonate with that. Well, from there, how has did you like that pause? I'm like, from
Yeah.
there, because that was
Yeah.
like a lot of great stuff. From there, this year has been looking so different for you. So you went from the transition, then it's like it starts to emerge differently. You've emerged differently.
Yeah. So back to that conversation, right? Back to the suffering or even the pre-suffering piece. We were chatting briefly before the call, and I wanted to bring everybody kind of up to speed. Is that, as a coach, as a speaker, I would go to these events, and I'm sure you've been to these events. And one of my coaches is an incredible speaker. And then when he shared his like origin story, and he shared his like how he
Mm-hmm.
learned or earned the right to be speaking here or coaching, um, uh, he boy, he went through some stuff. Like
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you brought this up.
super
Yeah.
stuff. Like he shared a story of how like his mom gave up him and his kids when he was like 5, 6 years old, and foster care took them away, and mom walked away. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was old enough to see that and comprehend that, and like having to live with that. And then all like he shared all of this struggle through foster care systems and abuse and challenges. And I'm just like, I'm like, I grew up in a very like good home and middle class and all these things. And so I'm sitting here like feeling a little too privileged, right? And so I remember I recall this, saying to myself like, I haven't really gone through anything hard or challenging like to define me as a coach or a speaker. And I share this with you. I said, you have to like, you need to check yourself, like what you're putting out into the universe, because it will be delivered. And
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, these last 2 years have presented me with plenty of perspectives and challenges and discomforts and pains to share. And so literally, it was yesterday, I was sitting in therapy with my wife and our therapist. We go as a couple at the same time. And I said, excuse me, I said, nope, I'm good. I don't need any more perspective. Like, let's
Totally
just,
fine.
yeah, excuse me. Totally good. I don't need any more. No more lessons at the moment. I got all I can handle. And sure enough, like we're gonna get a couple more. Obviously, like I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. So
Oh, I love
at
that. The
at
honesty.
yeah. So at the same time though, going through these struggles and asking myself, okay, like what's my message? What's my mission? How do I do this? And what I realized is um there are a lot of people that are unnecessarily suffering because of a lack of awareness of what's just around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes you're losing so slowly you think you're winning, and that there's some danger that's creeping up, and there's an entrepreneurial curse, if you will, that's out there.
Please tell me more.
This issue that keeps showing up in coaching and through the experiences that I've had over the last 13 years working with entrepreneurs and business owners, that that when growing and building a business, it has a massive effect on their own personal lives and bodies, their relationships. And if if we don't focus on a few very key things, it can absolutely tear families apart.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was almost one of them, right? And so through all of this discomfort and pain, etc., I asked myself, okay, like other than coaching, like what am I most passionate about? And what I discovered is I have the opportunity to save families. I have the opportunity to protect relationships and build really amazing businesses and a lot of abundance and help people really discover their highest and best self. And it has everything to do with what we talked about before, is that, my mission is to help entrepreneurs get time back so they can become more present instead of having to buy presents. That key word right there, presence,
Mhm.
is the one piece that connects it all together, because a lack of presence creates guilt. And when we look at our life, it's comprised. So most entrepreneurs' life, there's more, but like the three key areas that we look at are leadership, love, and life.
Mhm.
And
Love that.
so when we're at work, if we're not all in at work because we feel guilty that we're not at home or we're not paying attention to our families or we didn't make enough time for ourselves physically or mentally or spiritually,
Mhm.
we're not all in at work. And so we're in those other worlds. And then when we're at home, because we weren't all in at work, we're
Now
then
we're thinking about work.
we're thinking about work, and then we justify answering that call during dinner or showing or stepping outside of the party to take care of the thing, or on vacation not going on the ride with the family because you have to put out this fire that's actually paying for the vacation that you're taking before it even closed, like etc. And then whenever you're attempting to like focus on self, you feel guilty because you should be home or you should be work or whatever it is. And so the lack of the discipline to stay fully present where you are pulls from all three areas. The side effects of pulling from all three areas is where the self-destructive behavior comes in,
Mhm.
is where the substance abuse comes in. It's where the being subject to the attention of others starts to come in, right?
Yeah, that's
And that's the issue. And so I was compelled to write a book, and I'm in the middle of that right now. And the book is called
congratulations.
and that book is called The Entrepreneur's Regret.
Ah. So that's where it all ties in, is like this entrepreneur guilt or curse, I think,
Yeah.
as you had said. It's like
Yeah, The
now it's
Entrepreneur's
coming
Curse.
full circle into this book, and like you're putting everything into kind
Yeah.
of a
A
more
framework.
a framework. Yeah,
Yeah.
steps and
Mhm.
understanding, deeper understanding, because I think that's where for so long the kind of collective consciousness, if you will, was like, well, there needs to be work-life balance. And now so many more people are coming out of that and like, well, it's not really work-life balance. It's all integrated. There's no
Yes.
separation.
Yes.
And how do you establish, whether you call them boundaries or
Mhm.
exactly what you're putting kind of a framework around and putting the
All of
steps
it.
through? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Which is
so
so needed. So
so yeah,
needed.
so in my heart for years, I've always had that nudge to like share something, and I kept asking myself, well, what am I here to share? And what I realized is I hadn't gone through it yet.
Ah.
And
This comes
so
back to be careful what you ask the
be
universe.
careful what you ask the universe for. Because this is about 5 years ago. I remember going, I need to write a book. Like I just
Yeah.
remember the first thing, I need to write a book. And then the question was like, well, about what? Right? Like, because at first, like the thought that came to my mind is like, well, that's ego. Like writing a book for what? And so at first it was more of like an ego project. And so I let it off the side. However, the universe is like, oh, no, no, we'll give you something to write about. Just hang on. Just hang on.
Just you wait.
And so it switched very, very quickly from an ego project to very much a service project.
That's amazing. I love that. And it's like, you know, you asked for it and you really kind of let it go, but then you're
Be
just,
careful.
yeah.
Well, but what's interesting is that this is the thing, right? So like we are so, and we talked about this in our brief little break. So I want to thank everybody for my sniffling. I got a nosebleed in the middle of that conversation. We were saying, something is not wanting you to tell this story. So we had to take a break. I'm good now. And
Yeah.
and
Which is
so
synchronistic. We'll see what more comes
right, we'll
from
see
that.
what comes out of this. From that, it's we keep saying that we want all these altruistic characteristics like discipline and grace and all of these things, and yet those characteristics are forged through the opposite. The only way
Mhm.
we really achieve discipline is through boredom, right? The only time we achieve grace is through uh
Challenge
like
and struggle and
challenge, stress,
yeah.
struggle, discontentment, right? Patience. You receive patience through challenge, right? So all of these qualities that we want to like embrace only come from the opposite.
It's the whole yin and yang, like the polarity. You
Yeah.
have to have both sides.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I was just thinking yesterday that I was like, you may not know that side of me, but I'm really intense. I can be really intense. And that's what I've really utilized to do some of the stuff that I've done. But, and with that, I really have a softness too, and like a nurturing. So I was like, how can I
Yeah.
integrate both of them? So they're like
Yeah.
both present together and I don't have to swing from one side to the other all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's needed,
Hmm.
those things that we don't see as valuable at the time, or like, why am I going through this?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is trying to take you somewhere.
So that's the thing is that, in this season, as bad as it can get and as bad as it's been, and I just everything comes through gratitude.
Mm,
And it's the lesson. And I'm just constantly asking myself, what's the lesson at this level? Because every level has a lesson. And the moment you think you've mastered it and you get to the next level, well, there's a new lesson.
hmm.
So there is no level without a lesson. And you
Yeah.
just get better at solving certain challenges. So I could rail against it and say, this isn't fair. I thought we had this figured out. Why now? I've been doing this for too long. I've made too much money to feel this poor. I've done da 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 da. Like, okay, what's the lesson, bro?
Hmm.
Because until you learn the lesson, you're destined to repeat it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so very true because I think we could probably both speak from experience on that. Like, it's going to happen again unless you really connect
Mhm.
with it and
Yeah.
really work through of like, well, what not like what is the lesson, and then
Mhm.
integrating it into the life that you're you're doing. I want to go back to one thing, is like you said, be careful what you ask the universe for, which I mean is just so true, because it's like anything you put intention behind
Yeah.
at some point in time, like you're really, you know, putting that out into the vibrational field, whatever you want to call it. But it, like some people you're here like, I want to write a book, or I want to be a speaker, or I want to, make $5 million or whatever it is. And then when all those things show up, we're like, wait, what the heck? Because it's not just supposed to be like, here you go, here you go. It's just not handed to you if
Mhm.
you're not ready for it. If you're not who you need to really authentically be to get into that space. Is there anything that you would add on to that? Like from it, because everything you've shared was from your personal experience, and then like all the coaching clients you've worked with over the past 13 years, it's like you're
Yeah.
just kind of seeing all this the common thread, right? In between some of that.
Yeah. So I've always kind of been a creature of pattern. Like I like, how do I always pay attention to certain patterns and things in that sense. Um, I want to make sure I kind of understand the question here so I can respond. Uh,
So I think the question is, like, let's use the example of the book. If
mhm.
you're not, how did you listen? Do that. Like, how did you listen to that book coming back into your field of, it was just something you knew internally, innately, or it was just something that just kind of started to emerge?
Oh, okay. Got it. Nope. I got it. Um, so it was through coaching. I was in another coaching program um, working working on creating value for like a group coaching environment. And I was going through an avatar exercise, and one of the exercises was identifying your ideal client. And then through the exercise, I just recalled something that I had heard 6 years ago. And that comment was, your ideal client is you 5 years ago.
Mm,
So what would you share with yourself 5 years ago that you've lived through, experience, and learned today? And I was like,
Wow.
oh man, oh
Wow,
boy,
that is
right,
like great. Yeah.
right. Because if I would have run into myself 5 years ago, the version of me today, I mean, yeah, cool. Like I could have bypassed some of this, but then I mean, but then do I get to create and develop this new perspective? No, right? However, that exercise and really going through and some of the questions were like, what's the thing that keeps your avatar up at night? What's the thing that they don't know that's right around the corner? What are the top five stressors that they are experiencing? It's like it was really granular on going through their pain points.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I think we want to create content, or we want that's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's it's very easy to jump into um that kind of uh
Or ego.
ego, yeah, some
Yeah.
more like
Get attention.
ego
Yeah.
driven celebrity type of content versus you know messages that serve. And it was going through that exercise where at first it was like, okay, so like I know what my skill set is. I'm a systems and leverage guy. So for what? What is it good for? Okay, to get time back. To do what? To do more of the things you love and like, et cetera. And but I was always coming from the perspective of somebody that had everything else to either put together, or I was actually coming from the hallucination that I had it put together. And
Mm.
what I wasn't really going deep on was all the inauthenticity that was going on in my life, in my relationships, in my health, in my challenges with eating and drinking, and then um, uh, my marriage. Right. And so once I became very clear and owned all of my challenges around those areas, I realized, oh, building a business with systems and leverage and creating a life like this has everything to do with um I'll share with you, like we talk about big why a lot
Right.
in a lot of the different things that we do. And I had a lot of trouble with this for years. For years. I had no idea how to do this exercise. And this summer specifically, through a really difficult interaction with my family, I got really clear on what my why was. And it was simply this, is that when my kids are grown and they go somewhere and someone asks them, hey, can you share some of the biggest milestones in your life growing up? What are your favorite memories? Or what are the biggest, not favorite, but what are the biggest memories that you have growing up? I want to be part of their story from the positive perspective. That's it. I want them to be able to recall their milestones, whether it was one of the hardest experiences of their life or the happiest experience of their life, that their dad was there in a positive way and not as a warning and not as a don't be like him.
Mm.
That's it.
That's very powerful. And it's simple and so powerful at the
And
same time.
there's no finish line.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Um, that speaks to my heart and in so many ways. And I really appreciate you sharing that because uh it's a little personal how it's hitting me as well. So thanks for sharing that. I think, we've talked before on the podcast on actually, I think it was the last episode, but there's just such power in simplicity.
Mhm.
And we try and overcomplicate things all the time. And it's like, if you can just sit with it, like, obviously, there was some times there that it really became clear. If you're like, for me, the same thing with the big why. Like, I sometimes like would do the same thing where I'm like, I just am not totally sure. I can come up with stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it will emerge. And Wasn't expecting that, Matt.
Neither
I'm
was
like, that got
I.
to my heart.
Yeah.
Um, so really having that why with the book and with the clients and with the coaching, I mean, that makes the
Mhm.
world of difference. I heard in there earlier too, you said like, knowing that you're utilizing what you've been through yourself to be able to save marriages, to save relationships, to um I mean that in and of itself, is that how you start your day with the morning of like really
Mm.
reconnecting with some of that? Because
So,
each day gets so monotonous sometimes for
yeah.
any of us.
Um, so that's a great question. So I have the privilege of getting up and my wife and I just get an hour together in the mornings before our kids get up, before anything else. And we go downstairs, we have our routine. I feed the dogs, I let them out one at a time. I do the thing. She's getting the coffee ready. I have my coffee with a pat of butter. So she aerates my butter and then
That's
pours
so
my
sweet.
cup. And then we sit down together. And then we kind of get the day started with each other, right? Like it's
Mhm.
not necessarily we're going to sit down and be like, okay, so what are your top three goals and what are your check marks?
The
And
whole
like,
to-do
yeah,
list or
no,
whatever. Yeah.
no, no, no.
None of that.
Again, it's so like the beauty of presence is that it's simple, is we have that shared experience to start the day and just that proximity and
Hmm.
presence together um, is a great start for us, right? Then my daughters get ready for school, and then I go do the gym, and then I go in and start my coaching calls and all of those things. And so, um, no, I could be way more like I could give you a list of all of the forms and the checklists and all the things. And at right
Yeah.
now at this point, they're like a lot of the things that the way that I do and I show up has become ritual that was learned that had to be purposeful
Hmm.
before it became automatic and it wasn't natural, right? And like the challenge that I had early on, and I mean this is we I'm I'm literally doing like a 3 hour master class online around the book here in the next 45 days before we
Awesome.
release the book, and I'm actually putting together a course around this for anyone who's this resonates with, it experiences with. They can reach out to me and I can send more information on how that works. This isn't a pitch for that. I just, if someone's resonating with this and it's like, well, how do I get more? There is more. It's not done yet. Uh, and yet,
It will be
um,
done. We'll be checking
it
in
no,
with you when the book is
so
done.
the thing is, it's done. It's in here. I'm getting it out
Yeah.
in a way that's shareable
In a new way. Yeah.
in a new way, right? And so I can give you like one peek into one of the frameworks. And so from my perspective, love is spelled Time. Love is spelled time. And the way that we experience love is different for everyone. And for me, I had to get really purposeful around how I connected with the people that I choose to love and making sure that I'm really aware of what matters for them. Because for me, my love languages are this and this, but and that's how I show love is through the way I like to experience love. But that's not how other people experience love. So I have to
Right.
get really in tune with the way they experience love. And then if I want to show love, I have to connect with them in the way that they resonate. And so for me, I had to get really purposeful around quality time, acts of service, and words of affirmation for my trio, for my wife and
Hmm.
my two daughters. And so for me, love is spelled Time, and the T stands for take a second and disconnect.
Mm.
So before I never enter the house on the phone. I never come upstairs until I cleanse my mindset for the day. So I'll literally, like for me, it's when I get up, I turn off all my lights, I hang up my headphones, and that is my ritual of leaving the office, even though I work from home. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do that, and that gets me. So take a second and disconnect. When I go upstairs, I stands for inquire about me, ask me how my day was, and actually care.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the M then stands for make me feel seen, make me feel seen. And the way that I let somebody, like, so for my wife, it's the way I can make her feel seen is there are certain things around the house that just need to get done. And if
Yeah.
I do them without being asked, it's like her highest form of love language. So, and here's what's beautiful is I know it's her love language because she never doesn't talk about it when I do it. If I
Mm-hmm.
just pick up all the shoes and put them in a place,
Mm-hmm.
she comes home and she goes, did you just move all the shoes? And I say, I did. And then she goes, thank you so much. Right. Or like, did you empty the dishwasher without being, I did. Right. And so that's a very simple way that I can, that
So great.
make me feel seen. And then, so the E is encourage me,
Mm-hmm.
just encourage me, be in my corner, push me lovingly. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so with all of them. And so though that's my mental checklist of coming in to make sure that I'm being positively present here when I should be. I'm not
Matt,
perfect.
this
I
is
mess
so
up all the
great.
time.
Yeah. No, and it's not about being perfect, but this is so great because it really puts it into like a step and understanding. Again, I think we said that
Yeah.
earlier, but it's like a step by step of like, how do I do this walking in the door? How do I do
Mhm.
this?
It's just a
And
quick 4-part checklist for me. It's one of the frameworks. And
yeah,
then I go a lot deeper into each one of those to then really, because everyone's different. I mean, what's beautiful is that
absolutely.
we're a prism
That's just
of
like how we
beauty.
know how to love somebody or
Mhm.
how they know that they want love. It's like there's, so much more
Yeah.
to it, but it gives
Yes.
people an idea of like how to better connect in
Yeah.
presence, like you said. Like with my kids, they don't want the advice or this or that. It's just 90% of the time they just want somebody to sit there,
Yeah.
see them and be present with them.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
life-changing.
Yeah. That's
Um,
yeah.
Congratulations on all this stuff because this is like as you were saying all that, I'm like I am so excited for you and like from
Thank
the
you.
last time we spoke until now, and I know we'll speak again of course in the future because um to see everything that's kind of like coming full circle is really exciting, and people need it. That's what is even more so of like you've learned how to apply this in your life and now you can go share it for um everyone.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. With the one thing I just wanted to go back to really quick. I know
Mhm.
we're going on, but you said earlier about that I think it was a somebody you worked with and all this stuff that they had gone through in your life, and then you were kind of like, well, wow, I really haven't gone through all of that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was so great to bring up because people think that who am I to do this? That's a really common phrase of like, who am I to do this? And where, how did it shift for you that then you were like, I have to do this. Like, I really have to write this book. I really have to share this message, like everything that I've been through for them.
Ooh, yeah.
Seeing from like where you were
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and looking back at like the version of you 5 years ago you shared.
Yeah. So I'm part of a men's group called the Balanced Business Dads, and we do biannual retreats. We go to a campground, and 12, 15 of us all get to hang out and get real vulnerable and help one another. And there's a
Mhm.
framework for that as well. There's frameworks everywhere. And I remember at my first dad's retreat showing up, and the first day or two, everyone's just kind of, you know, we're just chit-chatting and we're just networking and we're just kind of everyone's starting to get to know one another. And I just recall it's so fascinating how perspective is I come in and I go, man, it seems like everybody's got everything together. Like I feel like I'm the one with the worst issues or the biggest problems here right now. And then everyone's heard the saying that like if everyone threw all their problems into the center,
Uh-huh.
if you found out what everybody was dealing with, you'd gladly take your own back. And
Mm-hmm.
I just recall sitting next to a guy that was like young and fit and like looked like he had it all together. And then he shared his story, and my heart just hit the floor. And the whole time, like up until that point, like I was sharing some coaching things and I was doing some presenting and he was leaning in and he was taking notes and he was really getting all this thing out of it. And then he shared his story, and I'm just like, oh, what the heck? So two realizations was this is like everyone's experiencing something,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
your experience is someone's survival. Like the way you survived or the way you got through your experience can be someone's survival guide.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, and we can never know who it is, but there's somebody out there that needs to hear what you've learned, what your perspective is on it, how you got through it.
Yeah.
Right. And then lastly is that there is no scale that measures issues. My issue isn't bigger than yours.
Mm-hmm.
My challenges aren't harder than yours, and your trauma isn't less than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like we just are. Everyone's got their thing. And the thing is, what's interesting is when I had the conversation with the guy and I was like, how did you get through all of it? And he goes, I didn't know any different. That was my life.
Wow.
Right. Like he
That
grew
gives
up, he
perspective.
he grew up through abuse and trauma. He didn't realize how bad he had it until like later, having to process it, looking backwards, going, oh, you mean
Yeah.
everyone didn't live like this? Everyone didn't experience this? Okay, right? But like as everyone's going through their own things, you don't
It's just
necessarily you don't know
kind of
you're
like
going you
check
don't
out
necessarily
from,
know you're trudging through the lowest moment of your life when you're going through it sometimes. At least
yeah,
I didn't because
that's a great point.
it was masked. So going back to like the realization or the aha around it is I recall just kind of talking through one of my coaches around what's something we can do. And I don't remember exactly what he said or how he said it, but all of a sudden I go, wait a minute. I'm not here to help people make more money. I'm here to save families. And I was instantly covered in goosebumps.
It's like boom.
I was like, and I remember I was in this chair and he just sat there, smiled, and he's like, and what else? And what else? And like we just kept going. And I'm like, holy shit.
That changes it.
Because I don't care if you sold your company for 1 billion whatever and you're on a beach somewhere by yourself
Mm-hmm.
with no one to share it with,
Mm-hmm.
like it's going to get old quick
Yeah.
when your kids don't want to visit you when they have a choice to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
But
definitely puts it in perspective. And those were huge shares. My heart's like, I didn't know I was coming on here today with you to have my heart like break open a couple times because I'm like totally feeling it.
well, it's important, right? I mean,
It's
it's
so important,
it's
and
important.
it's time is fleeting and it goes by way quicker than we think it's going to.
Yeah.
That was so incredible on to the perspective of the gentleman you shared that was at the retreat, and just we only know what we're going through when we like maybe get down the road and take a look back and really
Yeah.
kind of see like
When we connect the dots,
connect the
we go,
dots and
we
get
go,
perspective from
oh,
other people's experiences and everything else. But thank you for sharing
yeah.
some deep
Oh,
heartfelt stuff.
thanks for creating an environment where things like this can be shared.
I thanks, Matt. Like I'm gonna cry. Why? I don't know. But the word in there you said was vulnerable. And I think it's like the more authentic we are, the more vulnerable we're being with one another. And with that vulnerability is, really sharing some of the stuff. And we don't
Yeah.
have to drown in it or relive it all. It just means like really being authentic to ourselves of what we've been through and what we've experienced to take that into the future of how else we can help somebody else.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to be doing this because this is my has emerged more so of like something that I find true joy in doing, and hearing more of your journey and experiences over the last time since we talked. And I can't wait to read your book. So let me know when that's out.
Oh, there'll be a copy coming your way.
Thank you so much. But if you do want to hear more about Matt or get in touch with Matt, you can find him on Facebook, but all the links will be in the podcast episode too, if they want to reach
Cool.
out to you direct.
Nice. Yeah. No,
Well, and
I'm happy I'm happy to connect with anyone who resonates with this in any kind of capacity.
absolutely. And is there anything closing thoughts? I think we covered so many great things today, so thank you.
I will say this, right? Like somebody posted a post this morning on Facebook on if you could give your younger self some business advice or any kind of advice, really, what would it be? And what I shared was it goes in alignment with what we said here is I said if you actually knew how little people thought about you, you wouldn't care so much about what people think about you. So go be full
Yes.
blast and F the rest.
I love it. I love it. Perfect way to end.
Because the people
Perfect.
that need to know you.
Yes. And
That's
they
it.
can't know you if you're not
Go
doing
full
something to put
blast.
it out there. Yeah, full blast, like you
Go full
said.
blast. Yeah. Live full blast.
Oh, thanks, Matt, so much. Great way to end it. And
Yeah. Appreciate you.
until next time, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure.